Well, hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming. I very much appreciate it. And what I'm planning to do is to go over some of the Ray material that you may already know, and at the same time ask you to hold back on your questions until we move through several slides, and then I will open it up to questions and answers. You can still put your hand up, but know that it'll be addressed when I pause. I kind of want to go through a few slides to give everybody a chance to gather the material in their mind, ask any questions that comes up, and it gives me a chance to cover what I think I'd like to cover.
Excuse me, Eva, I've got to switch to you so you can show your screen.
Okay.
You don't have your screen up right now.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Show my screen. Hello everybody. I don't know if you heard me or not, but I want to welcome you all, and I want to tell you that I'm very happy that you're all here with me. And the procedure that we're going to be using is that if you have a question and you want to raise your hand, please do so, but I will not direct every question. I'm going to wait several slides that we go through before actually pausing to answer questions. This way it'll give you a chance to gather the material in your mind. It'll give me a chance to cover what I think I'd like to cover within a few slides. So you know, we have that opportunity to pause. What else do I want to say? You all know about raising your hand. If you've been through this drill before, you know that there's a little icon there that shows a hand, and when you're ready to ask a question, you just click on that and it'll show up on the screen for those of us that are attending to that. I also want to thank my little helpers in the back. I have BL and I have Joe, and they are very attentive and helpful in getting this started and looking after a lot of the technical material. So with that in mind, I am going to turn off this the picture of me, and there we go. And this will be a lot easier for me not to be distracted and to be able to talk about the rays. So what I didn't ask is how many of you are brand new to the rays, and if you are, have you had an opportunity to look at some of the Ray webinars that I had given a year or so ago? And they are all on makara.us. If you haven't, I would really encourage you to. At least it'll give you a really good background. Now, some of the Ray material I'm kind of going to go over with you now, but most of it is looking more at the nuances of the Rays. We're going to talk about things that normally don't get talked about in Ray workshops because they're more in-depth stuff. So here we go. I'm going to get started. So you are aware, I hope, that there is nothing in the whole solar system, irrespective of what stage of evolution we are at, that does not belong and has always not belonged to one of the 7 rays. All kingdoms in nature are conditioned by these rays, but it's the human kingdom that we are most interested in because it applies to us. And we know what the old adage is. It says, know thyself. And I can assure you there is nothing as good as knowing the 7 rays and the astrology together that give us such a good picture of who we are. Then we can address our strengths, we can address our weaknesses, we can always address on what our next step is, but the 7 rays are the basis of who we are. We are also told that the 7 rays are what you come into incarnation with, whereas the astrology is only for this incarnation. So every incarnation you have a brand new chart with new astrological impacts upon you. So we all by now hopefully know that only one color predominates. That means one ray particularly predominates. And depending on where we're at in our point of evolution, it would be either the soul ray or it would be the personality ray. And for most of us, it's a combination of the two. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay. So we are told that every human being is swept into manifestation on the impulse of some ray and is colored by that ray quality, which determines his form and indicates the way he should go. The word quality here is emphasized because a ray is a quality. And for those of you who have done workshops with me before, I've often used an experience for you to understand what we mean by quality. So if you shut your eyes for one moment and walk into a red room, feel its energy. What is it that you sense? Some people, now if we were together, I would ask you, but some people will tell me that they sense dynamism, aliveness, vibratory qualities. Then now walk into a blue room, shut your eyes, and feel its energy. What does that feel like to you? Many people have said it feels cool, it feels serene, calm. These are the qualities that we talk about when we refer to the word quality. There's a real difference between red and between blue. There is a difference between the vibration of red versus the vibration of blue. Hence, every ray has its particular quality, its color, its tone, its sound, and its vibration. All those are really synonymous terms when it comes to understanding the ray. So a ray confers physical conditions, as you know, your physical body. The astral nature has a particular ray quality, as well as does the mind, the mental nature. It also governs a particular chakra. And by knowing the rays, we understand that the ray is not good and it's not bad. It's how we are conditioned by that ray, or how we absorb the ray, that makes it what we call good or bad, or strength and weakness. It's like fire. Fire isn't good and it's not bad. How we appropriate fire, how we use fire, or it uses us, will determine good or bad. If fire heats our homes and warms you up, it's considered good. But if fire burns your house down, it's considered bad. Well, it's like the same thing with a ray. Depending how we use the ray will determine if it's a strength or if it's a weakness. We, of course, realize that as we evolve, eventually the personality ray will emerge and have control, until such time as we evolve even further, when the soul begins to dominate. And this is where we end up with the duality. And this is where we end up with the pairs of opposites, or the conflict. It's when the soul starts to make its presence felt that the personality doesn't like what it's experiencing. So in order to get to know ourselves, we're given some help by the Tibetan. He tells us that the mental body is governed by either the first ray, the fourth ray, and the fifth ray. The most common ones are the fourth and the fifth. The astral body is governed by either ray 2 or ray 6, with the most common one being the sixth ray. Why? Because if we look at the planes and what these planes represent, the sixth is counting from the bottom up, the bottom being 7. The sixth plane is the plane of our emotions, or our astrality. So hence it would govern the astral nature. The fifth, which is the one above that, is the plane of the mental vehicle. So hence the mind is generally governed by fifth. And if we look at the very bottom, it's the seventh. And the seventh hence would govern the form nature. So why is the third one in there? Because the third one, if you know your 3 aspects, is the matter aspect. And the form is the densest part of our being. So the third and the seventh kind of make sense. The seventh is dense because it's the bottom of that a list of all the various planes, and the third being matter. So after this, I will stop for questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to put your hand up. Now, advanced souls, which we call disciples, occasionally will choose a different ray for a particular vehicle. That only applies to discipleship. The rays that are listed above there are only the ones that will affect most people. And we do not have a choice before we incarnate, unless you are a disciple. Then you can choose. If the soul feels that for some reason you need to have a different ray on your astral, for example, it will choose that. Why would it choose a first ray astral, which is not the norm? It's maybe to round out a life that might be all soft rays or easy rays. When I say soft, it's 2, 4, 6 are considered the soft. We'll get into that in a moment. Yeah, so it's to round out. Sometimes a particular life has been a very, very difficult life in the past, so certain rays need to be chosen to ease up that life, to make it a little bit easier. But these are all out of our knowing and out of our conscious control. So I'll continue on saying that the personality ray finds its major field of activity in the physical body. It's the ray that determines its appearance, its purpose, its life trend, and its occupation. Here's another interesting little tidbit. Only disciples would have a personality ray that could be a first, a second, and a third. Think about that. That means you've got to already be a disciple in order to have a personality ray of the top 3. Early on, in the early stages, it would be 4, 5, 6, or 7. Now, the personality ray has a direct reflection onto the physical body. The soul ray has a direct reflection upon the astral body. And that's why we say the battlefield is always on the plane of glamour. And that's an interesting thing, that the soul first makes contact with the astral nature. It's the first touch of the soul is through our astrality. It's not through our personality, it's through our astrality. Well, personality being the whole thing. It's not through the mind, it's not through the physical form, it's through the astrality. So, let me see, are there any questions? We're going to go there. It looks like we're okay, no questions thus far. Okay, move on.
Eva, you have a question, Michael.
Okay, so we need to, let me find Michael. Is it Michael Stacy? Yeah, yes. Michael. Michael, you're already unmuted. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, how are you, Eva?
I'm good, thanks, Michael.
Great, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Likewise.
Yeah, if you would go back one slide, please.
Sure. Let me go back. Here we go.
Thank you. Okay, would you clarify, please, that disciples' first, second, third ray personalities, do you mean that disciples only have first, second, or third? Or, because I was watching Elena's presentation from the 2013 conference in the astrology, and she was talking about disciple CDP, who had a very interesting rayological structure, right. Being second ray soul, sixth ray personality, fifth ray mind, sixth ray emotional, and sixth ray physical.
Correct. No, all this is saying is in order to have either of these 3 or any of these 3, they will not show up unless you are a disciple.
Good. So I just wanted to have that clarification out there, that only if you're a disciple, you have a first, second, or third. If you don't have that, you're not a disciple.
Yeah, I guess so. But you could still have any of the other ones.
Yeah, okay.
It's not reduced to only these three. It's just that these three will not show up to someone who's not a disciple.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah,
All
great. Thank you.
Yeah. This is a piece that it's somewhere. I don't have a reference here. I'm not Michael. I don't quote pages, but it's somewhere in there that yeah. Unless you're a disciple, because these first three are reflections of the three rays of aspect, and the three rays of aspect are more. They're more occult. They're more. They're less concrete than the other four. The other four are much more concrete and easier to. On the plane of matter. They work with greater ease on the plane of matter. Hence, in order to have chosen any of these three to be a personality ray, you already have to be a disciple.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very welcome. All right. No questions. All right, I move on. Thank you very much, BL. Okay. So this is an interesting chart. We call them hard line rays versus soft line rays. And here I've tried to pull out symbols that would identify exactly what we're talking about. For the hard lines, you see all the symbols that have been chosen have straight lines in them somewhere along the way. And there, the energy tends to be more the energy of a mind or a mental vehicle. Even though, you know, I've given you exceptions, they tend to be more that way because they're hard. Moving on to the soft are 2, 4, and 6 along that line. And again, trying to show you the roundedness of those rays. And they're not as harsh, if I can use that word, as the hard line rays. Now, usually, if a person has only soft line rays, somewhere along the way, soul will choose for them to have a hard line. So if you have only soft line rays, for example, your personality, your soul, your mental vehicle, your physical body, it's not unusual to find a first-ray astral body. See that? Likewise, the other way around. If there are only hard line rays, generally, there is usually a sixth ray on the astral or second ray or something to round out the hard lines. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, so the other thing I'd like to talk about are the choices that we have and legacy rays. Oftentimes we hear references to legacy rays. So again, only disciples have the freedom to choose specific rays for particular purposes. We kind of discussed that. The soul knows the rays chosen can either be an asset or a liability. As I said, some lives are harder than other lives. The soul knows which rays are sometimes much more difficult to deal with. Like this CDP that Michael was referring to have a sixth ray physical and a sixth ray on the mind and a sixth ray, I think it was it a sixth ray astral? I mean, this woman had sixth ray in like 3 or 4 different places. That would have made her very, very much into attachments. You see, so sometimes the soul knows that in a particular life you've got to deal with certain things, and the rays will oftentimes help us or make it harder for us. So, a legacy ray. Just to confuse us even more, we have what is known as legacy rays, and they also influence this particular incarnation. So if a ray has been predominantly strong in a previous incarnation, many times there's an overlay of that quality that comes through you, and you can't place it anywhere if you have a pretty good handle on what your rays are. Sometimes it's hard to place them. Where is this particular energy coming from? Well, it could be that it was a previous personality ray or a previous mental ray. but it's got the overtones that still come through in this particular incarnation. It's because it left such an impact. It was so powerful that it's very hard to totally wipe it out of our consciousness. So sometimes it's hard. It's hard to actually get to know what our rays are, especially if we have a strong legacy ray that's determining itself or making itself more present in this incarnation. There's also a whole other area that I'm not going to go into, and those are known as sub-rays. Once we have a pretty good handle on our main rays, there are subs as well that go along with each vehicle. But you know, it requires so much finesse in order to try to get a handle on what that is. So we won't go into that. Suffice it that we get a pretty good idea of the main rays. And you know, I've said this so many times, after 22 years of being identified with a particular ray on my mind, I have now changed it. I've changed it because I've had feedback over the years, and I refused to buy into it. And I finally realized that, hey, maybe they're right. And I started to really, really examine the way my mind works. And it turns out that, I guess I've been wrong. So, you know, we get identified with a ray. We think that's who we are. And I think the people that are in the know that can give us good feedback, we really should pay attention to that. Okay, one more, and then we can go into more questions before we get into a whole other area. Our personality ray, as we know, can be very separative. It's attached to the form side of life. Remember, our personality ray, by its very being, is a selfish entity. And it's only when the soul starts to influence the personality and starts to infuse the personality that the heart opens up, and that the soul starts to make itself known and lean more towards group. The individual will lean more towards group consciousness, because that's what soul is. So it's much more detachment from the form life and much more into the life side of manifestation. And one becomes much more subjective, looking at the meaning behind life, the meaning behind situations, and behind why am I here, and so on. That is all more soul influence, not personality influence. Personality, as you know, is all about me and what more can I get to fill me. Whereas the soul is, what can I give? How can I serve? How can I give to others? How can I pay back? So when the personality ray becomes pronounced and dominant and has subordinated the three bodies, that's when the soul starts to impact and influence, and that's when we have what we call the dual life, and I referred to before. So we want to reach a point where the soul becomes the dominating factor. And many times in doing 7-ray workshops over the years, a lot of people do not identify a soul ray. Why? Because the soul is not that obvious. It's not in our faces. It's not in our gestures. It's not in the way we speak, and it's not in the way we act. And because it's so subtle, and if someone is not sufficiently soul influenced or soul infused, it's very difficult to actually get a sense of what that soul ray is. So I often will say to people, if everything in your regular life, in your personal life, has been looked after, and you don't have to worry about children or money or job, if you had to serve in some capacity, how would you see that service? What kind of service would you give? It's not what do you want to do, because many people will say, I want to have a good time, I want to have a holiday. That's not what we're asking here. It's in what way do you want to serve? And many times that will give you or give someone an indication of the ray of the soul. So, any questions? How are we doing there, BL?
I don't see any.
Okay. All right, we're going to move along. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of comparisons and ray types. So like everything else, there's usually a triplicity to everything. Even the rays, there's a triplicity to the rays, but oftentimes the Tibetan doesn't give us more than only the one quality. Through Michael's work and trying to read between the lines, we have an idea of what the two ray types are. So that's all that I can offer you is the two ray types as opposed to even three. But let's just deal with two. And you'll notice I've highlighted colors, and these are the colors, the main colors of the ray, the personality of the ray versus the soul, because each ray has a personality, has a soul, and therefore has a different color and a different quality associated with it. So the first ray, and this is good information for those that are relatively new to the rays, is called will and power. It's about purpose. And will, as you know, and power can be very destructive. So what is the type A? It's the one that's persistent, that never gives up, that is dependent upon by others, that is usually a leader. And finds himself in what vocations? Usually politics, in government, in being a CEO, and just having people, finding that leadership just falls in their lap. And we're not specifying here whether it's personality or whether it's soul. It doesn't at this point matter. It's sufficient that we get a real idea of the difference of the two ray types. The second one is more the destroyer. And it destroys that which prevents free expression. It's like trying to break the chains that hold people back. And again, that would come through in a variety of different ways. And it can be in also through leadership, but that is what drives them more than anything else. They don't want to see people confined. They want to see people liberated, and that's where their energy goes. The second ray type, it's called love wisdom, and by its very nature, it's inclusive, it's coherent, and it's magnetic. It's the sun. And what does the type A look like? It's got all those words: magnetic, it's radiant, it shares, it's compassionate, it's empathetic, it's got loving understanding. It's the soft side of the second ray. B type is the wisdom side. It's got more of a harder edge to it. It's a dispassionate understanding. Really, if we were to compare the two, we would say that type A was brought to us by the Christ. Type B was brought to us by the Buddha. The Buddha was about wisdom. The Christ was about love. So the two are slightly different. If you think you have ray 2 in your constitution, and many people who are attracted to this work are ray 2 souls, can you identify with which of the two you lean more toward? Now ray 3 is called active intelligence, or adaptability, or creativity. It's got the most words of all of the rays as its name. And how does type A look like? It's the philosopher, it's the theorist, it's the one with the abstract ideas, much like when we make reference to Einstein. It was his ability to give us the world of space, the world of numbers that was not concrete. The second type is the businessman, who is extremely practical, has a strategy, has a gamesmanship, can be manipulative, but not necessarily in a negative way. To be manipulative is to move energies around. This is the one that can really play chess well and understand the strategy that is involved in that kind of thing. Whereas the abstract idea one can be very impractical. So one can be practical, the other one is very impractical, because the mind is always in the abstract. It's not really grounded. It doesn't really have its feet firmly on the ground, except in bringing ideas down, bringing all those abstract ideas down to humanity, like a theorist would be. See what I mean? Okay. We move on to ray 4, which is known as harmony through conflict. It's about beauty. It's about at-oneing and unity. And it's got that sensitivity. So type A would be the ability to bring harmony out of conflict. And you see that, who are the ones that do that? Are mediators. They are sensitive to that which is not in harmony. And therefore, they constantly want to at one and synthesize and bring harmony. The second type is the colorful one, the kind that gets your attention because they are so dramatic. The character has magnetism attached to it. They have strong contrast, and you cannot help but bring your attention to them. In any given circle, they get the attention because the way they speak, the way they interact, there's always this contrast of energies and this colorfulness, and they're surrounded by drama, good or bad. This is also the artist. The highs and the lows would show themselves here. And they tend to be a little pushy sometimes. They force their thoughts and their ideas and their drama onto other people. So you see the difference between the two? One is constantly wanting to mediate, to wanting to at one, and the other really is a cross-section of humanity, showing the human condition. Okay, we move on to the 5th ray. It's known as concrete science, and it's not only about science. It's about the mind. It's about the intellect, and it's about analysis. So on the one hand, you have the researcher who will use the mind to dig deep, to try to bring clarity to that which has been researched, to try to be accurate in the information that it has received. Can be very, very detailed here and very descriptive. Whereas the B type is more the technician, it is more the one that is working with applied sciences, working in the lab, working in technology of all kinds. Even we're looking at computers, working with engineering, drafting, that kind of application. It's practical in its application because many times this kind of energy gives us inventions, gives us something that we can apply in the world right now. You know, the Aquarius coming in, you know, is a 5th ray sign, and we're going to see a lot more application of things that are being discovered that can help humanity. Anyway, I'm going to go off on a tangent if I start talking about that. So let's just stick here to the rays. The 6th ray, devotion or abstract idealism. You look at the word persistence. It doesn't matter on which A or B. 6th ray is persistent. It keeps on trudging and doing and moving and constantly going after what they believe. The type A is receptive, passive, loyal, tranquil. Would you ever think that the word gentle and tranquil applies to 6th ray? But it does. It's the purity. It's the one that is so open and receptive that we often see, for example, some of the people, the believers, the mystics who were very open and would wait to be influenced by the higher. They are many times receptive and open to guidance and to receiving from the higher realms, the abstract realms. And then you have the total opposite in the B type. That's the fiery zeal. That's the one that's devoted to the ideal with strong aspirations and can be very aggressive in their convictions and in going after what they believe in, such as, whatever a religious or an ideal can be. There are many, they'll go after that ideal almost with blinders on, irrespective of what anybody has to say. They move towards whatever that ideal is, whatever that goal is. Many of the religious wars are carried out by the B type, the ones that can be overly devoted or overly aggressive to whatever the ideal might be. Seventh type, it's called ceremonial order and magic. And the type A is highly organized, plays by the rules, meticulous, very good at management, finds themselves and many times in jobs where organization, management is part of the deal, right? And even in their homes, they're highly organized. They can put together a beautiful home because it falls into the whole patterning that is part of the seventh ray, creating a pattern, creating everything in order and nothing out of order. The B type is more about the creative process. That's what magic is all about, right? Taking something that is unseen and making it seen, taking an idea and making it happen. This is often lacking in many people who are esotericists. They stay in the high realms and in the abstract realms, but they can't make it happen on everyday life. They can't bring it down to manifestation. They don't know how to get a plan going. These are the people that can make the plan and can actually carry it out. Whatever the plan is, whether it's a business plan or whether it's a plan to have a school or anything, they can actually manifest it. These are the manifestors. And a lot of people have a combination of both. As I am a seventh ray personality, I can really relate to both of those things. I'm highly organized. I like playing by the rules, but at the same time, I'm a manifester. I make things happen, and I can be very creative in that way. So some of these are not as distinct as the description makes it out to be. Many times we can kind of blend the two. However, for the sixth ray, I think that there's a real difference between A and B. For the third ray, there's a real difference between A and B. So those are the two that I think are the most drastically different than some of the other ones that can easily blend in. Okay, any questions on that? Well, I'm glad everybody's absorbing all of this. This is great. Okay, no questions. I'm going to move along. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritties here. Planets, colors, and chakras of the seventh rays. For ray 1, will and power, the rulers of ray 1 are Pluto and Vulcan. And the color for ray 1 by now, you should know, it's red, right? And it rules the crown chakra or the pineal gland. For ray 2, it's love, wisdom. Remember, we talked about the two different kinds of A and B types for ray 2. One is on the love side, one is on the wisdom side. You have the sun, which is, the sun just radiates and is so magnetic. And you have Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system. And it's considered to be a benevolent and joyful kind of planet. Its color is indigo, and it, of course, rules the heart and the thymus gland. For ray 3, we have our Earth that we're living on. And all we have to do is look out and see all the greenery because its color is green on our Earth. And it's ruled by Saturn as well, the third ray. Saturn rules the throat chakra, where the mind actually rests, right, in the throat. And this is where we speak, and this is where we communicate. And this is what third ray is all about. It's active intelligence. This is where we write from, where our creativity is. It comes from the throat. So Earth and Saturn, and it rules the throat and the thyroid. So if we have, sometimes if we have throat problems or thyroid problems, I often ask myself, well, what am I saying that isn't quite right? Or is my speech good? Or I question myself if there is any throat problems, or I ask people to look at themselves if there's thyroid issues. Although thyroid is more than just the throat, it does affect the entire metabolism. But it's just one of the things that, you know, we should ask ourselves. Moving along. Harmony through conflict for fourth ray. The moon and Mercury, and its color is yellow. And it rules the base, where the adrenals are, where your the get up and go, or the fight or flight instincts are. And it's an interesting thing that when someone is a coward, we say they're yellow. It's as if that adrenaline that is used in those life situations isn't there, you know. So that's a very interesting use of the word yellow to describe someone who can't get those adrenals or the base chakra to enliven them, to get that burst of energy that is needed. Okay. Mercury also, by the way, is the linker, right? It's the one that links, it's the messenger. It's known as the messenger of the gods. It links the higher and the lower mind. So it's the linker, and that's what fourth ray is. It's in the middle. It links the upper and the lower. It's the bridge. It's also known as ruling the Antakarana, the rainbow bridge. Moving on to ray 5, concrete knowledge and science, is Venus. Venus is a fifth ray planet. Even though we think of it as love all the time, we think of it in its second ray, and it also distributes the second ray. But in our esoteric knowledge, we recognize that it's the synthetic mind. It's the mind that is it has beauty in it. And as a result, it is a beautiful synthetic kind of combination when it rules the mind. And it does rule the pituitary or the ajna center. Its color is orange. It's also color of a mind. The mental vehicle is an orange color. And remember, each one of these corresponds many times to the various planes that parts of the vehicles are found on. We're moving on to ray 6, and it's abstract idealism, and it is ruled by Mars. Mars is more of the militant, it's more of the aggressive quality of the sixth ray that we talked about before, whereas Neptune is more on the receptive. It's more on the soft side of the sixth ray. It rules the solar plexus or the pancreas, and its color is silvery rose. You know, you look through life with rose-colored glasses. Again, the use of these words, these colors, to indicate very much the energy of the ray. When you look at life in rose-colored glasses, you don't see it as it really is. And many times, sixth ray has blinkers on. They really don't see life as it really is. Seventh ray, ceremonial order and magic. And Uranus is the seventh ray planet. It rules the sacral center, or the gonads, and its color is violet. Okay. We're going to, I hope, I'm going to make all of these slides are going to be available once this recording has been done, so you can actually have this for references. So here we get into more specificity of the rays, and it might be a lot to take in, but we're going to move on to the various specifics. Which ray is principled? Well, it's first ray. Similarities of truth. Well, first ray is all about the truth, because it's the closest to deity, so to speak. So it sees the whole picture. It sees the truth as it is. Second ray also wants it's all about light. It's all about soul, and soul is about truth. And the third ray wants to go into the abstract and understand the mystery, the mystery up there. So that's all about truth as well. Whereas sixth ray, I just want to bring that in here, is about my truth. We're going to get to that later on. It's not about the truth. It's about my truth. Light. Always we say 2 and 5 is all about light. 2 is light, because soul is light. Second aspect, consciousness, is light. And fifth ray wants to shine the light on whatever it's working on, whether it's done through laser, whether it's done through a microscope, or whether it's done whatever facility it uses to shine the light, like a light bulb, even computers, it all wants to work with light. So 2 and 5 go hand in hand. Which rays are about the mental vehicle? Both 3 and 5. 3 is about the intellect, intelligence. 5 is about the mind. And which rays are about motion? Well, 3 is known as going in circles. It's circuitous or tangential, and it's rotary motion is also a description for the third ray. Whereas the fourth ray is more like the pendulum. It goes from one side to the other side, to the other side. Or it could be a seesaw, up and down. Or it could be the opposites, the high and the low. So fourth ray is in motion, like an oscillating, a piece of equipment where you see the energy going up and you see it down. And sixth ray is always on the run, and it tries to go for its goal. It's like a horse constantly running towards the goal. So those are the 3 rays that are mostly in motion. What about relational? Well, ray 2 is about the middle principle, and it relates the first and the third. It's about the soul, because it's a reflection of the second aspect, and the soul is about how we relate. It's about relationships. The third ray wants to see things that are relative. Everything is relative to something else. So again, it's relational. And 4 sees both sides. It says this is how this is related to that. It sees the extremes, or it sees the 2 different camps. Okay, which ray is all about wholes? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, because it's all of it. It's the source. It's the one with a capital O. 2, again, it's the light, and it is consciousness. And it's known as meticulous entirety. It wants to understand the completeness, the whole of it, with all the little details within the whole. And the third ray, well, the third ray is space, so to speak, right? It's all of it as well. It's the entire intellect, or the mind of God. So it takes in, again, the wholes. The fourth ray is the only one of the rays of attribute that would be whole, because it takes in from one end to the other and everything in between. So it takes in the whole and the parts. See how it depends on what you're looking for. You've got number 3 in so many different places, the third ray in so many different places. You've got the fourth ray in a variety of different places. It depends what it is that you're looking at, and what is the perspective, which is a fourth ray word, upon which we are looking at these things. Third ray is the parts. It's a triangle. Remember, the triangle has 3 different sides. It's the parts. Fourth ray, again, it's this side, it's that side. It's what is on one side and what is on the other side. It's the parts. And of course, the fifth ray is constantly taking things apart to understand and recognize and then know the whole through the parts. Okay? Any questions thus far?
Yes, Barbara.
Okay. All right. Oops. How do I, oh, there we go. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. I just wondered on slide number 8, when you're relating colors of colors to the different rays.
Mm-hmm.
That one, okay. I don't see color when I work with people on the rays, but I sense them, and it's like they're not corresponding to these colors always. And I don't know if I'm sensing chakra colors or if I'm sensing a combination of those rays within that individual.
That is that's a good understanding that you're coming to. You could be sensing chakra colors because we are also given colors for chakras. These are the personality colors of the rays. There are also esoteric colors. Again, one would have to be highly sensitive to them and, you know, have a sense of them. For example, I won't give you too many here. For the third ray, the esoteric color is black. Now, how many people actually sense the black? For the fifth ray, the esoteric color instead of orange is a steely blue. Also for the sixth ray, there's also a blue. It's a slightly different combination of blue. So you see that there are other colors as well. For the second one, for example, it's a sky blue. It's a very, very light blue. So there's 3 different shades of blue here. So why even go into that? Because it'll just confuse. So we leave it at the most obvious colors that the Tibetan has given us. And I wouldn't worry about color, because as far as color is concerned, it's like the least important of all of the things. It's more important to sense the vibration and to get a sense of the meaning of what you're getting versus the color itself.
Yes, because I can agree with the rulers. They show. I mean, the rulers are sometimes when you know someone a little bit better, those rulers are easy to sense.
Right.
With color sense, I can't say if it's definitely not. I'm not seeing those, but like you say, it's not that important.
Yeah, you're right. It's not. From everything the Tibetan says, is the color is the least important. It really is, because colors do change. As I said, even in our chakra system, the more evolved we become, the colors will change because the energy that we emit from those chakras change. The more whole, whole you become, the more the rays from those chakras end up changing. They move to different places. Getting into, you know, a lot more technical end of it here. But so the colors, as I said, are the least important.
Yeah, I guess I'm sensing an emanation of color. That's the closest I can go to defining what I get. So, okay, well, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, I think, BL, do we have any questions here? I see a question mark there.
No, well, Anne asked where's the number 7, and I just went back and answered her. I can see it on the bottom of my screen. It may be cut off on the bottom of hers.
Okay.
And there were a couple of others, but it was, you know, hey, will we get will the videos be available? Will the slides be available? Will it be available in audio? And yes, you answered that. We answered that to all. All of that will be posted to Makara.
Okay. So I see Yvonne has a question. Let me unmute you here, Yvonne. There we go.
Okay, it was on the next screen that you were on, Eva.
Okay. There we go.
All right. Is there any significance that 6 only appears in one place?
Well, it doesn't fit the other words here. Believe me, we're going to get into 6 in other slides. So 6 shows up a lot, but not with these particular qualities.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So if there's nothing else, and B, I'll just make sure that I'm not missing anything. I'm going to move on.
Okay, hold on. She said number 7 on slide 9. I was looking at slide 8.
Number 7. There isn't a 7 one here. I could have said parts as well. I could have put under parts for 7 as well. Okay. We could have put. We could easily have put that in there.
And then Barbara has another question.
Okay. Go ahead, Barbara.
I'm not really going to ask a question. I'm just going to point out that if you go up to your top, with your top menu bar where it says slideshow, if you go to full screen, everyone should be able to see the full slide.
Yeah, but if I do that,
You don't have your notes.
full screen, I can lower this so that, does that help? It's just that if I go into the way I would normally project, I lose the control panel and all that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's what you meant, but if I go to that particular full screen, I lose a lot. So I need to keep those little slides on the side.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So let's look at opposites. First ray of will and power is opposite to the second ray's love. First ray's isolation and fearlessness is opposite to second ray's inclusion and sensitivity. We will find that the first ray in many ways is opposite to the second ray. Many times the first ray individual needs to learn second ray characteristics or qualities, while the second ray individual has to learn first ray qualities to round them out more. Now, second ray's use of wise use of slow action is opposite to the third ray's busyness and speed. Okay? Wise use of slow action is a quote directly from the Tibetan. The third ray tends to be busy as a bee and has a lot of speed. It's rotary motion. It's circuitous. It goes around in circles. And you know, if any of you have been on one of these rides at a fair where you go on and it spins and spins and spins like a top, and you get off and your head is bursting because you're so dizzy, that's so third ray. That's spinning and spinning and spinning. Anyway, so we're moving on to the third rays. Calculatedness and deviousness is opposite to the first ray's, to the fourth ray and the first ray, honesty. Fourth ray is the first of the rays of attribute, and in that way it has a resonance with first ray. First ray is the first, it's the closest, as they say, to deity. Fourth ray is the first of the rays of attribute, and it has in some ways it carries a similar essence to it. Both of them want to be honest and true, whereas third ray can be very calculating and very devious and very strategic. So we're moving along. Fourth ray's emotional displays is opposite to the first and fifth ray's lack of emotion. We know that first ray can be very cold, very isolated, doesn't show emotions, especially if it's on the astral level where emotions are shown. First ray doesn't show its emotions at all. As a matter of fact, it tends to, push it under a rug until all of a sudden it'll just explode because it's been suppressed for so long. Fifth ray lacks that kind of luster. Fifth ray is very matter of fact, very scientific, and in science you're not supposed to get involved emotionally. You're supposed to stay very, very detached from your experiment. So fifth ray tends to lack emotion. That we say fifth ray that lacks magnetism, and that's why, because they're kind of cool that way. They don't show their emotions. So I'm going to go to the next one. The fifth ray's mentality is concrete and practical. Now that's opposite to the third ray, which is flexible, which is abstractness of the mind, and the fourth ray being intuitive, right? Third ray is practical, it's concrete, it likes to go step by step, it can plod along, and it can try to shine the light on it so that it's understood in its practical way. Third ray is just, it can jump around, it can be very abstract. Sometimes if you listen to third ray speak, you don't know what the hell they're talking about because it's so abstract. And the fourth ray doesn't need to go step by step. Fourth ray just kind of gets it, can be very, very intuitive. And those are oftentimes rays that we see for a mental vehicle. You know, I could actually have put first ray in here as well. First ray is also intuitive on the if it was a mental ray. So I can put first ray in here as well. Okay, first ray's directness is opposite to third ray's circularity. They beat around the bush. They don't get to the point. First ray is so direct that it can be sometimes shocking. Okay, second ray's smothering love is opposite to first ray's independence. Any questions on this slide? Okay, no questions.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Okay, excellent. I'll move along. Now, we wanted to get some clarity for the sixth ray. Why? Because the USA is a sixth ray country. It's the dominant ray astrally for most of humanity. And the majority of people will have sixth ray somewhere in their constitution. Sixth ray, we say, needs moderation, needs realism, needs practicality, clear thought, and self-honesty. So what are some of the weaknesses of the sixth ray? It can be very reactive, very strong, very visceral. They can get very upset and very angry and show that emotion, and very roiled and turned on that way. And when they speak many times, there's enthusiasm, and there's that quality. It can inspire and lift you up with that enthusiasm, or it can be so strong that sometimes it's affronting. Third ray denies and seeks escape. It's known as the hater of forms because it can reach the abstract, it can reach to the highest realms, as in the mystics that they do. It tends to look to escape. And how do we escape? You know this better than I do. We can escape through alcohol, through drugs, through zoning out on television. Most teenagers these days do not even converse. They're all constantly escaping rather than dealing with life. They're on their iPad or iPhone, and yeah, we see that all around us. And they're the first, sixth ray is the first to deny. They'll deny anything that is necessarily pointed out in the way of feedback. That's not me. That's not me. It doesn't exist in me. So they don't see the real for what it is. That's on the downside. That's on the weakness side. One of the reasons is that the measuring stick, which is born out of the ideal, is held so high for the sixth ray that they see themselves as not good enough. And they self-negate. They're really hard on themselves. That is a major problem in the United States, particularly because so many people find themselves on the sixth ray. They experience overwhelm, which puts them into shutdown mode. And the sixth ray is about extremes. No moderation. It's all or nothing. You know, all or nothing. So many times, like I have a daughter, sixth ray personality, and she'll say, well, I'm going to go on a diet, let's say, and it'll start next week. Well, up till next week, she'll gorge herself. It's like all or nothing, because she knows she's going to start a diet on that day, so she wants to take advantage. Like, it's all or nothing. And when she's on that nothing, it's like no way will she have even a drop of what she's not supposed to have. It's like no moderation in there, you see. And that just doesn't apply to a diet. That applies to so many other things for sixth ray. They make promises to oneself. Right? How many times do you talk to yourself and you make promises to yourself? I will not do this, or from now on I will, and so on. They make promises to themselves because they have this ideal in their mind of what it should be like, of what they would like themselves to be like, and hence they make promises. How often, though, do they actually live up to that promise? Do they actually carry it out? Sixth ray is about immediate sensitivity leading to personalization. Again, notice when you tell a story about somebody, how often someone will say, well, you know, that happened to me, or and they bring it back to themselves. Or if you talk about somebody, they'll think that in many ways that you're making reference to them. They'll personalize very, very quickly. That's so sixth ray, taking things personally. And procrastination, putting things off. Putting things off, always with the idea of rose-colored glasses, because things are going to work out. You know, it'll just happen. It'll all work out. Don't worry. It'll always work out. That's procrastinating. That's not dealing with what is. Now, those are some of the weaknesses. Of course, there are more. These are just some of the obvious ones that I was thinking of. And I'm now looking at some of the strengths. They can abstract. They can lift themselves up and have these most beautiful experiences that all the mystics have talked about through that abstraction. And through that abstraction, they have a sense of what the ideal is. And they can bring that to humanity with inspiration, with upliftment, which is the third one down, with enthusiasm. They can also redeem and purify. These are some of the drastic measures that a sixth ray will take in order to purify themselves, in order to reach whatever that ideal is. Whether it's initiation, whether it's to be a spiritual person, they will continually work on the purification aspect. It's very Virgo here, you know. And the high ideals are very important. We need that. These are the people that give other people faith and hope and belief, and all that is so necessary. Or they say, without that kind of hope and belief and faith, the people shall perish. So the sixth ray is a very necessary thing. It has lived with us now for 2,500 years, and we have seen the results of it. But at the same time, there's this whole downside that that we need to become aware of. It's a divine energy. It always depends on how it's appropriated. And the very last paragraph I have there is the sixth ray rules the astral plane. And glamour, if those of you that know what glamour is a distortion of what is real. And there's an emotional response to that. And since the majority of humanity is astral almost always, we must learn to handle our emotions. Okay. I don't know, Biel, if there's any questions, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Okay, thanks. Warring, similarities, conflict. The fourth ray, it projects, does a lot of projections, plays devil's advocate, is the adversary and arbitrary, and will actually pick fight just to be contrary so many times. Sixth ray creates conflict by irking others because they know how to get to you, whether it's their emotions, whether it's that extreme with which they speak. They just irk. You know what I mean by irk? They get on your nerves and they just disturb and bother. That can often be sixth ray. They are warring. Also, the sixth ray is the militant. It's the one that will fight for the ideal, for their conviction. You never want to get into a discussion about religion or politics with 6th ray types, because they'll get very adamant and they'll get very, very enthusiastic and upset, and sometimes are not open to hear another perspective and another point of view, because their ideal and their conviction and their belief is so strong. So this is where the warring part of the 4th and the 6th rays like in that respect. And warriors. 4th ray is the warrior as well. It'll fight, but it has an intuitive sense about what it's fighting for. Whereas the 6th ray many times will be fighting for their causes or will be blind followers without thinking it out. 6th ray is a ray of the emotions. It's not a ray of the mind. 4th ray can be a ray of the mind. So tries to see the different perspectives. And hence the fighting and the warrior part of it, it takes on a different coloring than it does for the 6th ray type. I'm going to move on to isolation. Look at all the rays that know how to be isolated, or know how to handle isolation. And in what way do they handle that? Well, the 1st ray doesn't need anyone. It's all by itself. It'll be the top of the ladder, the top of the executive position. It's the leader in government or the leader in a corporation. It doesn't need anybody, really. It might associate themselves with a group that they can confer with, but that's usually done for political reasons. They really don't need anybody. There's a coolness to the 1st ray. 2nd ray will isolate themselves through protecting themselves because of overwhelm and absorbing too much energy. They can feel very easily overwhelmed, and hence they will insulate themselves. And it's a protective mechanism. 4th ray. 4th ray can isolate themselves because they identify with everyone. They identify with all. 4th ray is the one that also absorbs, but in a different way. 2nd ray absorbs the energy, the emotion. 4th ray absorbs through identification. They can identify with everybody. That can be very overwhelming too. 6th ray, driving themselves and irking others, pushing others away. And 5th ray can be through separating via science, and they look at the part. I'm looking at the time, and it's moving on really quickly, and I have so much still I want to cover with you. So unless there's an urgent question, I'm going to move through this a little faster. Similarities between 1st ray and 4th ray. Initiatory and spontaneous. 1st ray is initiatory while the 4th ray is spontaneous. Intuitive. 1st ray going through the source, and 4th ray resonance with the Buddhic plane, where all is realized and everything is just known. And because it can sort of sense both sides, it can have an intuitive understanding. 1st ray sees the big picture. It has a bird's eye view. 4th ray sees the spectrum, sees both sides. Justice oriented. The 1st ray is about the law. 4th ray is about conflict, is injustice, and looks constantly to harmonize, to at one, to be the mediator. Standing. 1st ray just stands, does not need to take a stand. 4th ray takes a stand. The breath, life expression via the breath. The 1st ray is the breath itself. 4th ray breathes it and is breathed by it. So hence we see the heaviness of the 4th ray because of the drama, and therefore it sighs and it feels the heaviness. 1st ray brings together, tries to synthesize so that it's all one. And 4th ray does it by bringing the two sides together and at oneing. I almost look at it as the 1st ray mixes it all up with a stirring pot. The 4th ray just tries to bring everything that's on the sides into the center. 1st ray is the first of the rays of aspect, and the fourth ray is the first of the rays of attribute. Okay, similarities. Sensitivity and overwhelm for second ray, and for fourth ray, that is experienced through identification. Inertia for second ray, because of the depth of the entirety, it can be so overwhelming. And for the fourth ray, it's innate within the ray itself. Equilibrium is sattva. It's known as equilibrium. And when there is no movement, it's at ones. Also, the inertia can come when you're at the bottom of that scale, so that there is total depression. You're not moving forward, and you almost need to get kicked in order to get forward, and in order to start moving. And that is often done through therapy, through drugs, and so on. But that is the bottom of the scale as well, and that's inertia. Absorption and being the sponge for the second ray, it includes. The fourth ray is via identification. Need to be loved and appreciated. The second ray is the pleaser. It's the door. It can be the doormat, and the fourth ray will do it through see me, this is me, and it can be the clown. It can be the over dramatized one. Will entertain. Second ray will compromise for the need to be loved and for pleasing other people. Fourth ray will compromise for keeping the equilibrium and the status quo and the harmony. Peace, second ray is supposed to radiate that peace, whereas the fourth ray will reach it through harmony. It strives for that. It's constantly looking for it. I have a friend who has a fourth ray mind, and she's always saying, I just want peace of mind, constantly looking for that peace that is not in the mind for that particular person. I have here some opposites or some differences between third ray and fifth ray. And why was that chosen? Because so often people think they have third ray on the mind, when in fact they don't. It could be a third ray brain. If you have third ray physical body, then you have a third ray brain. And if you have a third ray brain, you might speak fast, your thoughts might run away with you, your thoughts are faster than you can actually articulate that. That often people will think that they have third ray on their mind, when in fact it's a third ray brain. So third ray theorizes, speculates, whereas the fifth ray is linear thinking and sequential thinking. Third ray is a planner and strategizer, whereas the fifth ray is through powers of analysis and discrimination. That's the way that mind works. Third ray can be abstract thinker. The fifth ray is very keen and focused intellect, can be concrete, linear, as opposed to abstract. Third ray understands relativity and the abstract, whereas the fifth ray is sense-bounded. If it doesn't meet, and I can't see it, feel it, taste it, and touch it, it doesn't exist. Very sense-bounded. Third ray will modify, qualify for the sake of accuracy and thought, whereas fifth ray will do that through experimentation. It will verify only through experimentation. Third ray is tangential, circuitous. Fifth ray plods step by step. Third ray can be vague and overly complex thought, whereas the fifth ray is accurate, based on facts. So you get a sense of the differences here. Third ray can be very confusing and complex and so on, whereas the fifth ray, it wants to shed the light on things. It wants things to be clear, lucid, and to explain it, usually in a method, in a step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Third ray is inaccuracy and practical detail, whereas the fifth ray is very precise and accurate. Third ray can circumvent the truth, whereas the fifth ray can discriminate truth from error. And the third ray is broad, seeing the entire. Fifth ray is narrow, like a laser beam. Okay. 1 and 6 similarities and differences. Some of the similarities between 1 and 6, they both move in a straight line. They are both fearless. Sixth ray is when it fights for a cause. First ray is strong, one-pointed focus. Sixth ray has the same thing. They're both willful. They're both destructive. And first ray can do it unnecessarily, and sixth ray when it's totally out of control. They're both good with anger and violence. They both can display that. Some of the differences, first ray is independent, sixth ray depends and is codependent. First ray is impersonal and detached. Sixth ray is very personal and very attached. First ray is the leader. Sixth ray needs to be led and tends to follow, wants guidance. First ray, large-mindedness. Sixth ray, narrow. First ray, impersonal reactions. Sixth ray, very personal. The difference here between first and sixth is very important. One is cool and cold. The other one is warm and hot. First ray, it controls and it suppresses, and sixth ray loses it, totally loses control, and is very reactive. First ray is truth. Sixth ray is my truth, which is limited. First ray non-emotional, sixth ray emotional, and oftentimes the two get very, very confused. And okay, any questions thus far before we go on to rays and ray cycles? So I've given you a lot of stuff here that you can have the slides and you can look at later on just to get an idea of the differences. But it's what I'm trying to point out is so often we confuse certain rays. And why do we confuse them? Because the energies are similar in some way. Then you've got to look at the finer things. What makes them different? Like 1 and 6. And so often people will say, first ray, but it's in fact, they're sixth ray. Likewise with the minds, 3 and 5. You get the idea. Okay, so rays in time produce the world patterns. When a ray begins to pass out of manifestation, it brings a crystallizing cycle, requiring destruction and producing mental conditions of a set and static nature. That's an important little piece here. As soon as it becomes crystallized, it's got to break down. And therefore, we see destructions all around us right now. Because right now, in history, we are moving, well, I'm not going to go a step ahead of myself. Let me go down to this point here. There are 5 energies presently in manifestations. There's the 6th, the 7th, and the 2nd is always present, the 3rd, and the 1st. These 5 energies together will determine the trend of world affairs, we are told. Ray 5 cycled in 1775. It led to the Industrial Revolution, to the technology world. Hierarchy actually said that humanity exceeded its expectation for the use of Ray 5 during that cycle. However, so it's starting to wane. The 5th ray is starting to wane, leaving behind it all the technological advances that we have developed. It takes a long time for something to wane, but at the same time, Aquarius is coming in, and Aquarius is a 5th ray sign. So, and it's an air sign, which means it's a mental sign. So as much as that cycle is starting to wane, it's still going to be around for a while. The 2nd ray, it has the longest cycle, producing a crisis of love. Why? Because we are living in a 2nd ray solar system, right? This is the system whereby the mandate is to learn love. Nobody can get away from that. This is what we need to learn as a planetary life. We need to learn love. 3rd ray cycle is also very long because it's about intelligence, which must be stimulated even in the lowest of the sons of men, we are told. It was dominant in a previous solar system because that's where intelligence was born, and that's where the seeds of intelligence have now been so stimulated that they exist in everything. In every atom, that seed of intelligence is there, and that's because of what was developed in the previous solar system. Hope I'm not going too fast, guys. I'm just looking at the time, and I don't want to keep you here too long, and I still have a lot that I'd like to share. So the 3rd ray influence is seen in money. which is the concretized expression of the spiritual energy of intelligence. The first ray we see expressed in destructive elements. And that first ray energy streams from Shambhala and lies behind the present world crisis. For, and this is a quote, "It is the will of God to produce certain radical and momentous changes in the consciousness of the race, which will completely alter man's attitude to life." We had the Shambhala impact in the year 2000. We're going to have more coming in, probably the year 2025. So it's meant to wake us up. Up till now, human intelligence has served materialism. But this hopefully will change if humanity responds rightly to the clash of energies created by the outgoing sixth ray and the incoming seventh ray. You realize that the Piscean age is outgoing and the new Aquarian age is coming in. Now, the sixth ray cycle of 2,500 years is starting to wane, and the new cycle of the Aquarian energy is coming in. So the past 2,000 years have been conditioned by the sixth ray of devotion and idealism. With that sixth ray, a blind procedure, only one aspect of reality is ever seen at a time, usually the least desirable. All else is sealed to the sixth ray types. They vision only one picture. Their horizon is limited to only one point of view. To most of humanity, this vision has focused on the material world, material comforts, material possessions, and material enterprises. When a ray cycles out, what is it that we see? We see its lower manifestation rather than its higher manifestation. It's like the people who are so influenced by that sixth ray can almost sense that that energy is waning, and so therefore they hang on to it even with greater zeal than before. It almost reminds me of running a race. When you run a race and you see the finish line, as tired as you are, you all of a sudden gather up this extra energy that you didn't think you had to finish that, to go to that finish line with as much power as you can. And it's the same thing right now. It's these sixth ray types, and we see this much more in the fanatics and the extremism that is coming through. That they're moving with so much intensity right now because there's an inner sense that energy is starting to wane. So we see lots of this right now out in the world. Sixth ray people are often reactionaries. They're the conservatives, they're the diehards, the fanatics who hold on to the past, and they hinder progress. So I talked about the 2,500 years of the sixth ray era and the Piscean age, but the sixth ray was a much greater zodiacal cycle of 250,000 years. So it's interesting that the two are culminating at the same time, and the two new ones are starting at the same time, the 2,500-year cycle of Aquarius, as well as the 250,000 cycle of the seventh ray, which is coming in. So that seventh ray, steadily gaining influence. It aids and inaugurates the new age based on spiritual drive, on aspiration, on mental freedom, and on the physical plane. We will just start to see a lot more of that seventh ray. And there are a large number of seventh ray individuals who are starting to incarnate more and more, both on a soul level and on a personality level. And they are starting to organize and bring new methods of life to many of the crystallized attitudes. And the result of this is that the sixth ray energy is decreasing, and they throw the millions of people who don't respond to either ray into a state of bewilderment and to a feeling of being lost. And they feel that what they've held on to so long is now rapidly fading. And and you know what? And this is the bewilderment that seems to have plagued so much of society, so much of that unhappiness that they're starting to feel, and they don't know how to respond to that, and that they're bringing in new government, new ways of doing things, because they think that'll save their old conditioning. So the incoming seventh ray via Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, is coinciding, as I said, with this larger 250,000 years cycle of the seventh ray. Aquarius itself does not display seventh ray. It does not convey that. It is only its ruler, Uranus, that does. Aquarius conveys the fifth ray. Now, that incoming seventh ray will play through the planetary sacral center, and that sacral center of every human being, that sacral center is ruled by Uranus, and that sacral center is all about sex. So it's going to increase the whole, that whole area. It's going to increase its energy. How will that play out? We don't know. It's a lot of focus right now on sex. In every ad, whether they advertise a car or food, there's a whole sexual overtone to it. Now, the seventh ray is a mental ray. Maybe more mental energy will be applied to the use of the sexual energy. You know, it might take quite a number of years before a wiser approach to sex will actually come into play. But that is the vision for the future. The higher expression of the seventh ray is white magic, which is, what is white magic? It's working with the soul. So the power of these trained workers who are working with seventh ray is to bring the within together with the without, so that that which is below, which is on the physical plane, can be patterned to that which is above, that which is spirit, that which is soul, so that the reflection on the physical plane can be in keeping with the higher energies. So the seventh ray wants to relate life and form. That's what the seventh ray really wants to do. It wants to bring the energy of spirituality into the form. It's done so much with ritual. It's supposed to be done with architecture. It's supposed to be done with any kind of art, any kind of writings, which is a form. It's supposed to try to bring the divine into form. The only problem is the seventh ray also kind of governs the black magician. And so we might see a lot more material evil actually expressing itself at the same time as the new forms will be manifesting. So we have to kind of keep an eye out for that. Seventh ray is the densest, it's materiality, and so whatever turns someone on materially will be again energized even more. So what is it that we need? We need discrimination. And that is what needs to develop, especially as we're moving into the greater consciousness of this new Aquarian age. There will be tremendous mental focus because Aquarius is an air sign, and an air represents mind. It does convey the fifth ray, which is the ray of the mind. And Uranus is a seventh ray. And remember, early on we were looking at the hard line rays versus the soft line rays, and I said that usually the hard line rays refer more to the mind. So Uranus, even though seventh ray is not the ray of the mind, it tends to place patterns within our consciousness, and that can be reflected in the mind. So the forces of the seventh ray work out on the physical plane, where we'll see most of the changes happening as we proceed more and more into the Aquarian age. How are we going to see that? Well, we're told there'll be greater etheric vision. We already are seeing the influx of ultraviolet rays because there have been openings and holes in the ozone layer, which bring in that seventh ray energy. Right now, our skin and our eyes are not able to deal with this incoming energy well. But it is said that in the future, humanity will be born in such a way that these rays will not affect us quite in the same way as they are affecting us detrimentally now. The other thing is we're going to see it in the healing. I've already seen videos by this Dr. Eric, what's his last name? Eric Pearl, who has got this whole new mode of healing, and he's working with the etheric web, and he's able to teach other people how to work with the ethers. It's phenomenal stuff. So more and more we're going to see changes in the way healing is being handled. So we're going to see changes, as I said, without going into all of this. Remember, the seventh ray wants to bring that which is above down to that which is below. So it wants to bring spirit into manifestation. So we're going to see more of that. And the old ways will definitely get more and more destroyed as first ray is brought in. So some more of the things that we're going to see with the seventh ray is environmental movement and health and fitness movement. We're already seeing that. There is so much energy being poured into right now, into our diets, into our health, with newer ways in which to approach those very things, newer supplements and so on. We're going to see caring for the earth and our bodies as well. And we see that in ecology. Look at how we're talking about climate change. Caring of the earth is a seventh ray modality. So more and more of that is happening. People are really concerned about the rising waters. That is all a very seventh ray approach to looking after our planet. Those under the influence of the seventh ray are innovators who work in practicality to create new culture, economic and political forms, such as consensus-based decision-making, multi-stakeholder dialogues, socially responsible businesses, community supportive agriculture, and the use of new participatory rituals to affirm the oneness of all of life. Many large organizations and corporations are using an Aquarian model, which is a leaderless model, in order to involve everybody, in order to have a say. I believe Google is one of them. Even maybe the Apple industry has also brought that about. This is all based on the new Aquarian way of dealing with the people in the organizations. So conflicts today, both within and between nations, are usually based on the clashes of those who think that things are fine the way they are, and those who feel that things are out of order and need to be put right. So there are many that are trying to put it right by working for justice and equity and allocating global resources, or protecting and restoring natural environment. And we see that with all the various marches that are going on, and people striking and sit downs and so on. All of this trying to bring attention to these clashes and to these areas that are not fitting in to the right order of things. So the way forward is to combine the best of the traditional values, which we hopefully have been able to filter in and to sift out, with the impetus of the new incoming energies. This will create a higher synthesis that will open and expand consciousness, while maintaining enough stability to allow us to adjust to the increasing and rapid changes. So I have one more slide, and then if there are any questions, and I'm keeping you a little longer, I hope you don't mind, for those that might be on a tight schedule. I understand if you have to leave, but I just have one more thing I want to say, and that's the seventh ray and the animal kingdom. Domestic animals constitute the heart center in the life of the entity who ensouls the animal kingdom. Do we understand that? the animals themselves do not have individual souls, but there is the animal kingdom, and within the kingdom, you're going to have the various chakras as well. So the domestic animals are the most evolved of all the animal in the animal kingdom, and they constitute the heart center of the animal kingdom, so to speak, okay? Now, we are told that it's been a long, long time since the animal kingdom individualized, and that goes a long time, millions and millions of years ago. Maybe now with the incoming seventh ray, there will be some individualization. So those highly evolved animals may then step into the human kingdom and become the early sons of men, right? The most unevolved, because they've just moved in from the animal kingdom, and then they'll have to go through their thousands and thousands and thousands of lives developing personality. So the animal kingdom does not react, we are told, to the seventh ray, but the human kingdom does. But the seventh ray will have three effects in relation to the two kingdoms and their interplay. It will refine the animal bodies, because since Atlantis, the animals have been occupied with the development of karma. You remember that way back when the animal kingdom roamed the earth, and they were much larger than animal man then, and they did some atrocious things to animal man. And hence, it has taken since Atlantis for that karma to finally be worked off by the animal kingdom. Hence, the animal kingdom has sacrificed itself. I mean, we eat the animal kingdom, do we not? So that's one way of seeing how karma has been developed for the animal kingdom. And the new seventh ray will bring about a closer relationship between man and the animal. And we're told it'll cause a great destruction of the present animal forms. What does that mean? I really don't know. I just know that that's what it says. So, in spite of all the problems we see, and in spite of what's going on in the world, we have to stay optimistic because we know that evolution is continually moving in our direction. We have hierarchy helping us. We have the whole growth and development of humanity that is moving into the direction of greater consciousness. And absolutely nothing can stand for long against the tide of evolution. So, I know I've kind of rushed this, guys. I didn't want to get it all in, so I apologize for that. But it will be available for you, as I said. So this is a good time if you have any comments or questions, and yeah, if there's anything that had piqued your thoughts, this is a good time.
Eva?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, to remind everybody, it is on www.makara, makara.us, and we will put out when it's been posted, because it's gonna take it at least a week or so, maybe longer, to get posted. But when it's posted in both the video, the audio, and with the copy of the slides, we will send out, for students of the Moira Federation, it will go out on the Student Union, notifying you that it has been posted. For the students who found out about this webinar through the emails from our external website, you'll get an email also that way. So,
Thank you.
okay.
So I do see some hands. I see Helen. Oh, why can't I do this?
Here, let me get there.
Please. There we go. Hi, Helen.
Oh, hi, Eva. I just want to say a very big thank you for this webinar. What stands out is the clarity that you have about the subject.
Thank you very
so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. There's Michael again.
Yeah, he's self-muted, so.
Okay, Michael.
Okay, there I am.
There you go.
I just wanted to express my appreciation as well, because you've done a marvelous job in putting so much information together and shared it in just a very short period of time. And I would highly recommend that all students, no matter what degree they think they have of knowing the 7 rays, would benefit from reviewing this.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Michael, coming from you, you're an occultist. Thank you.
So it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eva,
So Vera.
you have several more hands, but I want to say that you've got all kinds of comments too. Asha says, thank you. She joined late, but she'll definitely listen to the replay. And she says, you always give us a PhD in an hour or so. So thank you from Asha. Joe says, love the discussion of the outgoing 6th and the incoming 7th rays. As a person working actively with the 7th ray, this is very helpful. Christine says, thanks. I've studied the rays with 4 different teachers, and this is by far most interesting and engaging approach. Yvonne says, thank you. And Robert says, absolutely great, thanks. Okay, so those are all the comments I've got right now, but of course, like I said, we've still got several hands, so let's go to Helen Colter.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Do I have a raised hand? I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, okay. All right, I put it down for you. Thank you. And then we had Vera.
Hi, Vera.
Yeah, hello, Eva. Yeah, I had sort of niggling question in my mind for some time, astrology. So when from the moment of conception, we are developing in the mother's body, and during the time, we are actually exposed to all sorts of influences. So how come that at the moment of the birth, when we pop out from the mother's body, suddenly there is this astrological significance? So do you know about the mechanism for that? So why suddenly there is this
mechanism per se, I don't know, but I do know that from an esoteric perspective, it is considered the same as a thumbprint or a blueprint. Is the minute that you come through, that's when the sun is on the horizon, and that becomes your ascendant and hence the blueprint of your astrology for that incarnation. But yeah, we're always influenced internally, but you see, you haven't yet awoken, and it takes that awakening to actually put your life, to start your life, basically.
Yeah, so it's probably also related to the moment we take our first breath. Yeah, okay. Thank
Exactly.
you.
That's exactly it. Whereas, as I said earlier, that the rays are already chosen by you as a soul in a state prior to incarnation. So the rays have already been established as to what they're going to be, and the astrology then is only once you have taken your first breath that it's then, this is your astrological chart, and those are the influences for this particular incarnation.
Yeah, I call it always, it's my toolbox, the astrology. Yeah. Thank you, thanks.
You're very welcome. You do such a good job, BL, going through all of this. I appreciate it. Karen.
Yeah, hi, Eva.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, thank you. This has been very, very good. But in terms of you just said that the astrology is only for this incarnation, we choose the rays before we incarnate. But do we choose different rays each time we incarnate?
Now, that's a good question. When you read very how do I say it? You read the Tibetan, he says, every life we have a different ray. Every life we have a different ray. Okay, well, what does that mean? And then he goes on to say, because we need to experience all the qualities. We need to experience all the qualities. However, having said that, now I don't know if this is only my input or if this is as a result of having read this somewhere. When a soul chooses a particular ray for you to work on, well, if let's say in a given life you haven't fully developed that ray and it's a strong ray, you may, the soul may choose for you to continue with that ray, so that if it has been, for example, a mental ray, it may then crop up and become a personality ray, or vice versa. If it's been a personality ray and you haven't quite yet developed it to its fullest, and it can be on the mind, it might then find itself as a mental ray. In other words, the soul is exceptionally smart, right? It's very, very smart. It knows what you need as an individual in any given incarnation, and will choose to maybe move things around so that you don't totally start from scratch with every single ray. You've already worked with it, you've already developed it, so you move it elsewhere. Or it may choose to have several lives with the same personality ray. Now, your soul ray, in effect, does not really change, and yet it does, really. You know, like on the one hand, I say it doesn't, but on the other hand, he tells us when you get very, very far along in your evolution, those souls that are on the rays of attribute then move into the souls of aspect. So yeah, way down the road, maybe after the fourth initiation, maybe then those that have had souls on the rays of attribute may then move into the rays of aspect. But for the most part, from our perspective here, the way we are and the way we're growing and developing, rays of the soul does not change.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple of more comments here. Bibi says, thanks for all, very interesting. I was wondering about the legacy ray, which could be a remaining from a personality or a mental ray from a previous life. It cannot be the soul ray since it remains the same for many incarnations. Is that right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And that is why, you see, when we do these tips, or we do these workshops or whatever it is, there might be the really a high level of a particular ray, but you haven't seen that within yourself. You see, you just don't. Where is that ray? It could be a legacy ray. You know, it could easily be a legacy, or it could be a sub. You know, the legacy and the sub, they create greater confusion, unfortunately. You know, I'd like to say that it's very, very simple, but it isn't. They create, so therefore we really need to spend a lot of time understanding the rays, seeing them within yourself, looking at your life, getting feedback from other people, and maybe then on areas where there isn't the clarity, that might help you.
And then Jan says, thank you for this presentation. I was surprised that the similarities of the first and sixth ray could express themselves as so combative when they are so similar. Might this be due to the quality of each ray or another type of qualifying difference?
Well, it is definitely the quality within within those rays. They, in many respects, move in a particular way that is similar. Like we said, they both move in a straight line. They both can be angry and hold their emotions and then eject it out. They can both be very destructive, but it's done in a different way. First ray is done in a cold way, detached. Sixth ray does it from hot, from being so emotionally involved that it does things totally differently. But the actual end result could be similar, right? Could be destructive, could be moving in a straight line, and so on. It's how it's done. And that's why I always say to people, 6th ray, 1st ray, is there heat involved or is it cold? Are you totally detached or are you attached? Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, any other hands, but there is one more comment from Barbara. She says, thanks, very informative.
It is my pleasure. And you know what I'd like to do in the future? I'd like to do a webinar where we now start to look at those vehicles of ours. How are we going to look at our physical nature and try to determine a rate for our physical body? Likewise with the emotional body and the mental body. Then we'll move into the personality. How do we determine what our personality is? Now, you know, over the years, you know, there are hints and there are ways that we can look at this and hopefully try to ascertain that. Depending on how long that kind of webinar will be, will determine whether or not we start going into soul, because I would like to do a webinar on personality and soul. What is a personality? What is a soul? And how do we know the difference between the two? So, yeah, there's all this talk about personality and about soul, but what is soul? What is a soul? And how does soul express itself besides expressing through the heart? And we talk about soul infusion. Well, what does that really look like? These are the things that I'd like to put out in another 1 or 2 webinars, to be determined when. I don't know yet. Well,
Susan says, thanks, very engaging and enjoyable. I'm sorry I had to step.
that's okay. Oh, Susan. Yes, Susan Spencer. Okay,
and that looks like it, Eva.
Okay, well, I definitely appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for your questions, your comments. It is my joy and my pleasure to do this. I love this work, and I could talk about the rays all the time. So, I mean, go out and look at the world through eyes of rays. Look at rays and see if you can recognize it in the world, see if you can recognize it in people you encounter, without labeling them as such, but just see what energy comes through. So thank you all, and till next time. Bye.